Well, hello everyone. Happy Friday. I chose that song today. It was one whose words I have no idea what the words mean. I've had it for a while. Um, I think it came out of around 1990 something is when that guy wrote that song. And to this day, I don't know what the words mean to it. But I catch the spirit of it, the essence of it, and I don't have to know what the words mean in order to know in order to know it for what it is, the vibes. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's got some good vibes to it, and I connect with those vibes. It's like it's easy to connect with those vibes. It just seems to happen naturally when I hear the song, you know. Yeah. It's cool. It's awesome to 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 be able to sense that, to draw me out of my momentary insanity of thoughts and beliefs and suppositions and assumptions, and to just connect with something simple and something just simple, just lovingly simple, you know. So today, what am I going to talk about? I've been meditating on intimacy this week. Intimacy. If I go look it up on the internet, if I look the definition up, it's defined as a close familiarity, a friendship, a closeness. So basically, it's defined as being a closeness, a closeness. And I have to admit that intimacy for me is a new frontier. It's a new vista. And I can only share with you the intimacy that I've grown into. And I believe that positionally, that we're completely intimate with everything. I really believe that. For we are indeed one with the universe itself. Yet relatively, we are awakening to that absolute truth. So although it's absolutely true, relatively, I'm in a process of coming back to my senses, of becoming intimate with that which I'm most intimate with. So in a sense, we're in this time of like a courtship. You know how a courtship comes before the marriage. We're in this time of courtship, uh, before the marriage and the consummation of everything. We're like courting and dating this consciousness of life, of love. Individually, we're courting this consciousness, and collectively as well, we're dating and courting this consciousness of love. And it's during that courting process that we grow intimate, right? That we grow intimate. That we grow intimate with this consciousness of love, of life, of truth. And it seems like the closer we become individually, the more collectively we come to form this bride or bridegroom that we're going to consummate with. And members come together as they awaken individually. Individually awaking to the oneness, to the belonging, to the body of creation, to the whole of humanity, to that deeper it's a deeper level than a mental assertion. It's this like dawning of consciousness of being itself. This dawning of consciousness of being itself. That is about what this intimacy is that we're growing into is about. And there's this place, this fork in the road where the ego and the true self part ways. To where the way of attachment veers off to the left and the way of intimacy sort of veers off to the right. We come to this place of decision when we see the futility of staying on a path of attachment and the opportunity given us to enter into the way of intimacy. So it's altogether wise to consider deeply the differences between attachment and intimacy. Because the ego likes to substitute attachment for intimacy. It likes to substitute familiarity for intimacy. It likes to convince us that there's something else besides intimacy. And there are reasons why the ego wants to keep us away from intimacy. And we'll get into them. But it's the awareness of the nature of both attachment and intimacy that opens the door to where we can become free to choose our path. Whereas when we were attached, we were bound by the cord that attached us. But now we can choose whether we want to be slaves to our attachments or free to be intimate with everything. So there's this definite distinction between intimacy and attachment. When we attach ourselves to people, they feel confined by that. They feel controlled by us. When we try to hold on to people. Though we embrace them, it's a creepy type of embrace. It scares them away. Because that type of embrace comes from the ego, not from the heart of love. And attachment is a manufactured or forced intimacy. It's not true intimacy. True intimacy is not of the ego. True intimacy is not overbearing. True intimacy is without effort. It's not what we contrive and put together with our egoic devices. And what's it like when we attach ourselves to other people? When we try to hold on to them. When we attach ourselves, it's self-defeating. Because rather than getting closer to others, we end up driving them away from us. And so what does the ego do when we sense that we're pushing them away from us? Well, it just clings all that much harder and pushes them away further. That's the nature of the ego. It's insane. It's insane. It repeats the same behavior expecting a different result. It's loco. It's wacky. It's but when we cling to others, we become a weight. We become heavy. We become burdensome to them. And when we attach the weight of our cares upon other people, that's a hard thing for them to bear, you know? A parasite attaches itself to a host, and it'll just suck the lifeblood out of the host. And people often will attach themselves to others to try to draw the life out of others because they sense that they're lacking something themselves. And they have a belief that what they lack, the host can provide. And that belief fosters this desire, this drive, this compulsion to attach to other people. But intimacy is never about wearing another man's jacket. It's never about putting on another man's hat. It's never about borrowing another's name to make a point. It's never about using another person as a means to an end. And whenever we start to try to draw substance from people outside of ourselves, we begin to use them as a means to an end. And then they become this thing that we use instead of this person that we love. And we all know what it feels like to feel used by another person. Used and discarded. So if we use other people, or simply let ourselves become a thing for others to use, it's detrimental to fostering true intimacy. Now, just as intimacy is not an attachment, another thing we must see is that it's not familiarity. The Gospels give us this account of Jesus. They say, Jesus left this place and he went to his hometown accompanied by his disciples. And when the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Where did this man get these things, they asked. What's this wisdom that has been given him? What are these remarkable miracles he is performing? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simeon? Aren't his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. And Jesus replied to them, he said, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his own relatives, and in his own home. And he could not do any miracles there, except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their lack of faith. These people in his hometown, they had a great belief, but no faith. They had a great belief that this was the same old Jesus that they grew up with, that they skipped rocks across the pond with, that they played with at the playground, that they ate lunch with. They didn't see Jesus as he was in the moment. They seen him through the eyes of the past, and through seeing him with those eyes of the past, they held him in contempt. And when we look at one another and we think this is just the same old stuff that the guy was saying 50 times this past year. This is the same old guy. This is the same old stuff. We begin, when we look at people through the eyes of the past, it lends itself to holding them in contempt, to taking offense at them. And see, when we really don't know anyone, when we really don't put anybody in a box, when we really don't label people, when we really don't assume that we know what they're thinking and where they're going with their conversation, and when we don't make all these assumptions, and when we let people out of their box, that we've put them in, then anything's possible. Anything's possible. That's the ground that miracles happen in. Miracles happen when we give them space to happen, when we give them room to happen, when we don't encapsulate people into what we've made them to be by our judgments. You see, the person that we think we know, the person that we think we know, is not the actual person. You really can't know, we can't know each other by our recollections of what we were. Not really, not really. So to really know one another as we are, we have to be forgiving. We have to be able to abandon past judgments and all the imaginations that go along with them about what somebody is, who somebody is, what somebody believes, what we think somebody believes, what intentions we think somebody has. We have to abandon that, put down our defenses. It's hard to become intimate with other people when we're defensive. You know? So intimacy comes with this process of trusting, relaxing, and just seeing people and things for the way they really are in the moment. Apart from all our recollections of injury, apart from all our recollections of reward. And it starts with trust. We have to trust. When we trust, we open the door for intimacy to take place. And with that intimacy comes a deeper knowing. And this whole process starts at home. We have to initiate this process first with ourselves. The trust starts with ourselves. Because if we cannot trust ourselves, with ourselves, how will we trust ourselves with anything or anyone else? So the trust has to start with us. Sitting quietly by ourselves, with ourselves. We can come to see that we can be still and still be. That we can be still and still be okay. That we can be still and still be safe. And it's as we sit in the silence that we become intimate with it. We begin to trust the silence rather than fear it. We begin to relax in it. And we begin to discover and become convinced of its capacity to hold our being softly and gently and safely in its bosom, you know. We become intimate with the silence and the stillness itself. Trusting and resting in the stillness and silence. Trusting and resting in the stillness and the silence. We come to see things that we've never considered before. We find that we need do nothing, say anything, go anywhere. To simply be alive and right with the present moment. We find that it's okay to just be without being anything in particular. How do we know that? By just being without being anything in particular, by just resting, just sitting in that stillness and that silence and sensing that okayness. That okayness just to be. Just to be. That awareness of it being enough. Just to be. Just to be. That we don't need approval of other people to be ourselves. Who we are without the approval of others is enough. We have nothing to prove. And we learn that we can begin to trust our own intuition. This intuition that is innate within us. And we come to see that that intuition cannot come from other people. It can only come out of the depth of our own being. It's our intuition. And as we trust that intuition, we begin to intuitively know. And clarity precedes our actions and our responses. We act, we speak, from a posture, a position of pristine clarity. And the words just fit right into the picture. We don't have to make them fit. We don't have to force the words. They just fit right in. They just sit right there. They just hang right there like a star does in the sky, not needing the support of anything around it. That kind of a word. Logic is external to our being. But intuition is our being itself, feeling its way through life. And there are many things the heart is drawn to that simply are not logical. Yet there is the right that the mind knows, and there is the right that the heart knows. The mind can come to believe and disbelieve many things. Yet it's the heart that knows what is eternal, what's unchanging. The heart knows the way because it is the way. Last, the mind can be educated by the heart. It can learn to trust by experience. The mind learns to trust the heart by experience, by the act of trusting the heart. It comes to know that the heart can be trusted. Through the action of trusting the heart, the mind can come to know that the heart can be trusted. So the mind learns to trust the heart's discretion from practice. The mind learns to trust the heart's discretion from practice. And the mind can practice to become what we are at heart, basically trusting, innocent, open, willing. The mind that has been conditioned to be defensive closed, contentious, defiled, through practice, the mind that has been conditioned to be those things, through practice of following the discretion of the heart, it becomes vulnerable, open, and able to repent and turn around and go the opposite way of the practice of defensiveness and go in the direction of trusting the heart. And we all know what it's like when our conscience, when our consciousness pulls us in one direction and our mind becomes defensive against it, and we find ourselves at war with ourselves. Because the mind stands in opposition to what the heart knows. But through compassion, through acceptance, the mind can be stilled and it can be allowed to, not made to, but allowed to see the futility of its course and come back home to the heart. But the mind could never know the heart as being the higher intelligence unless it's simply allowed to follow the heart. So there's a place for courage. The mind has to have the courage to step out and follow the fearless heart. And the way of the heart is the way of love. It's not a way of fear. But a dense and hard and closed mind has to grow acclimated to the consciousness of the heart. Sort of the way a swimmer does to cold water, easing into it. A turtle must be drawn out of its shell. It cannot be forced out of it. And the mind must be drawn out of its defenses. It cannot be forced free from the ego. The mind has to become acclimated through experience. And so the mind's trust in the capacity of the heart to know truth comes with experience over time, with exposure. The trust that comes from the depths of our being, from our heart, from our center, not from the mind, but from deep within us, is reliable. It's a trust that doesn't rise and fall with beliefs and perceptions. It's a trust that leaves the heart resolved, steady. In times of adversity, in times of diversity. And the heart's trust is tied right in with the intuition. It simply knows because it itself is awareness. Kind of chew on that a minute. The heart's trust, it comes out of that intuition. It simply knows because it itself is awareness. It knows. The heart knows. Because it is. It's not a knowledge that comes out of causation, but a knowing that comes out of being. Not a knowledge born of causes, but a knowledge born of being. And it's in that knowing that comes out of being that this true, unconditional trust rises. And so it's the innate nature of the heart to trust. Just to know from a disposition of being one with what is. The heart does not recognize separation. The longing of the heart is not to be rid of anything, but simply to be with what's here. It's not the things that are here that make the heart sick. It's what is taken away from the heart that makes the heart sick. It's the heart that is divided, that is an ill heart, that has lost its sense of oneness. It's the heart that is divided, that has become ill, that needs to come back to its senses, to its sense of oneness. So the heart desires intimacy. It's only natural for the heart to sense the oneness, to sense the unity with everything. But it's the nature of the ego to resist intimacy. Because the ego exists by separation. The body of the ego is a body of an illusionary separate self. The body of the ego is a body of fear. And all its members are connected by that fear. And the ego fears intimacy. The ego fears intimacy because intimacy destroys fear. Yeah, the ego fears intimacy because intimacy destroys fear. And without fear, the ego withers away. It's the fear that sustains the ego, that nourishes it, that feeds it. It's the fear that keeps us disconnected, at odds with one another, at war with one another. So it's never a matter of going to war with the ego and fighting the fear. Fighting only perpetuates the fear. Fear is not overcome with force, but by enlightenment, by illumination, by seeing things as they really are. We really need to grasp this, that fear is not overcome by force. And it's not just physical force, but it's the force of our words and our ideas and our beliefs and our assumptions and perceptions upon one another. Fear is not overcome by forcing our way upon one another, our beliefs upon one another. Fear is overcome by enlightenment, by seeing, by allowing, not forcing. And when we see the fear for what it really is, it just goes away all by itself. We don't have to contend with it. Yet as long as you contend and fight with something, there is something that remains to fight with. Even if what you contend with is nothing more than an illusion, it exists in time simply by the force of contention. It ceases to exist when contention stops feeding its power to be. If we really believe that we're one, if we really believe that, there's nothing to fight with. Then the fight simply ends. All on its own. The war is over. We cease to fight anything or anyone. When we trust, when we relax, we no longer have to use force to force change. We can let things change in their own season. Rather than forcing our notions of right and wrong times upon others, demanding conformity to our beliefs. And it's then that as we abide in this trust, as we remain in a faithful state of a heart resolved to trust, not ambitious to trust, but resolved to trust. The resolved heart brings us into this state of relaxation that goes deeper. And the more that we allow our being to relax, to become fluid, to become soft, to become welcoming, then the more things make their way into our being. Sort of the way a fish would just freely swim in a warm body of water. It just fits right in. It just moves about freely within that body of water, within that body of being. Yet if our being is cold and hard, like a block of ice, such a body of water, of being, cannot become intimate with the fish. It won't allow the fish to enter into the depths of its being, to swim about freely within it. So it's when we resolve to relax and to trust that we begin to thaw out. Then diverse life forms find their way into the space of our being and fit into us quite naturally, without force, in that relaxed state of trust. Nothing needs work its way into our heart when our heart is like water. Nothing needs fight its way into our heart when our heart is soft. ducks like fish, Ducks are a lot like fish. I can picture like ducks coming into a pond, fluttering down upon it, you know. And it's like our heart just being this body of water, this pond, and these ducks coming down, lighting upon it. And not in just a heart that doesn't try to put all the ducks in a row. That doesn't try to conform them to a body of beliefs. We don't have to force the ducks to get in order. We don't have to keep all our ducks in a row. We can let them find their own place inside of us rather than place them. It seems like when we place them, when we put them in their place, that's where the problems begin. When we begin to put things in their place, to force conformity, then we create distance. Then we create distance. But everything comes to us when we simply let things come to us. When we can simply allow things to be in our presence, just as they are. In the moment. And we can only become intimate with things. We can only become intimate with people. We can only become intimate with the world around us as it is. As it is. When we put conditions upon each other, when we institute laws of being upon one another and try to enforce those, it just eats away at the intimacy. There's just something to be said about being with each other and just letting each other be. With being each other, with each other, and just letting each other be. To allow each other to have opinions of their own, minds of their own, feelings of their own. Judgments of their own. Even judgments, allowing people to have judgments of their own without judging them for having judgments of their own. Oh, what a vicious circle it becomes if we let it. But what a paradise it becomes when we can simply just let each other be. Just let things be, you know. And I think that's just a really great spot for me to stop and just leave you with the thought, oh, let it be. Just let things be. You know, just be. Yeah. If I had that song, I'd play at dances, but I don't. So I'm going to wrap it up at that point. Call that a wrap.